All right, another school we're talking about here is the Michigan State Spartans, and Jonathan Smith was in his first year as head coach last year. Had only a 5-7 record though, which is Michigan State's third straight losing season. They have a 14-22 record now over the last 3 years, their worst 3-year stretch since 1980 to 1982. Both the offense and the defense were really to blame last year. They were each 100th or worse in PFF grade last season. There is some optimism, though, for the offense because Aiden Childs is back for another year at quarterback, and they also have a very solid receiving core, too. Defense has a lot more question marks right now, but Dalton, that passing game for Michigan State has a lot of intriguing stuff.
Yeah, I think when you look at building a team, and this was the idea when Jonathan Smith came over from Oregon State, that when he brought Aiden Childs over with him, is basically he went, okay, we have to build this thing around my quarterback, around my former 4-star recruit quarterback. And when you look at what he has around him, he brought Jack Velling over from him at tight end from Oregon State with himself and with Childs. You've got Nick Marsh out there, who's a really interesting prospect at receiver. Krishan McCray, Amari Kelly coming in from the group of 5 level as wide receivers. This passing game gets really intriguing now with the depth of weapons that they have. And look, Jonathan Smith is always going to find ways to run the ball. He did it at Oregon State. Childs himself is a really dynamic runner. We'll talk about that. But I think when you really look at the potential and the upside of this Michigan State team, it's what Aiden Childs is going to be able to do with these weapons if he continues to develop as a passer.
Absolutely. You have a top 10 tight end in the country. You have 2 really good transfers, Amari Kelly and Krishan McCray. And then Nick Marsh was 5th among all true freshman receivers last year with 649 receiving yards. And, of course, last year was the year of the true freshman receiver, too. So the fact that he was top 5 in receiving yards among true freshmen in that year is really impressive. I'm excited to see what he can do as a true sophomore. Biggest weakness, though, is the opposite side, really, the pass defense for Michigan State right now. Really, last year, they were the 5th worst defense in the Power 4 in terms of EPA per pass. They had the 4th worst pass rush grade in the Power 4 and the 5th worst coverage grade in the Power 4, too. And making matters worse, they lost their top defensive back in cornerback Charles Brantley and their top pass rusher in Chris Bogle from last year's team, too. So what was already one of the worst pass defenses in the Power 4 might have gotten a little bit worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Can they make enough stops, especially in the passing game? Actually, last year, the run defense wasn't bad. I want to throw that in there as a strength also because they had a top 30 run defense grade in the country. So it really is kind of the beginning moments of the Jonathan Smith blueprint. We want to run the football. Last year, they did it with Nate Carter. He's gone, but they're going to figure out the run game under Jonathan Smith, and they stopped the run. They did those 2 things pretty well, and that's what had them in borderline bowl contention there. But you're right. They're going to be their ability to pass and stop the pass, especially because the pass rush and the coverage was not good enough. In the secondary, for me, is a big question this year for them.
Dawn, a lot of people are hyping up Aiden Childs for the 2026 NFL Draft. What did you see on tape when you watched him?
Okay, first of all, a dynamic runner, a dynamic athlete, highest rushing grade of any quarterback in the Power 4. That's the first thing to note about him is that he is a bootleg threat. He's a scrambling threat. He's a read option threat in a way that, say, in his previous regime at Oregon State, that DJ Uiagalelei or some of those other quarterbacks were not for Jonathan Smith in those offenses. Aiden Childs' legs make a big difference in this offense. The other things I notice about him as a passer, I think play action, obviously in this system, is very good for him, and an ability to throw it down the middle of the field. When he's targeting the middle third of the field last year, 84.5 passing grade, that's really good. To the outer 2/3 of it, 66.4. So got to get better at spreading the ball around across the field, but I think those middle of the field strikes, deep crossers and overs, deep posts, seam routes down to Jack Velling at tight end. That's where Childs really excels. That's where you want him to excel in this offense, is off of play action and striking down the middle of the field. And then again, dynamic feet as a runner. Now, the big problem, and the thing that we're going to talk about probably endlessly anytime we cover Michigan State, turnover-worthy plays, ball security, 20 turnover-worthy plays last year, most in the Big Ten. With him, it's inconsistent accuracy, and it's staring down targets. 16 of those 20 turnover-worthy plays against zone coverage. You're letting defenders get to your eyes. You're staring down your first read. If he can manipulate defenders better and then just be a little more consistent with his accuracy, right? Those 2 things, obviously, I mean, that's everything. Reading coverages and making accurate throws is everything. He's got to do those 2 things on a more consistent basis before, A, this team takes a big leap, and B, we start talking about Childs as a big-time prospect. But really good athlete, can make, I think, the fundamental throws in Jonathan Jonathan Smith's offense that he needs him to, but has to be more consistent to all areas of the field, and he has to protect the football. Nothing happens. You don't make a leap as a quarterback, as an offense, if you don't protect the football.
Absolutely. And a guy who should help him out up the seams next year is his tight end in Jack Velling, who's actually my number 8 tight end in college football entering the 2024 season. He's my number 8 tight end in college football entering the 2025 season. So a very consistent player, Jack Velling is. He wasn't as productive this past year at Michigan State as he was the year before at Oregon State. But like I said before, his body of work over those 2 years keeps him in my top 10 tight end list. He has 9 touchdown catches over the last 2 years, tied for the 5th most among Power 4 tight ends. 849 receiving yards in that span is 20th among all tight ends in college football. And in fact, over the last 2 years, there have only been 5 returning FBS tight ends that have been more valuable than Jack Velling, according to our wins above average metric. So a guy that could really help out Aiden Childs as he takes the next step in his development is a really good security blanket in Jack Velling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a big thing too, especially it's something you noticed at Oregon State, I should say, and last year at Michigan State, is the play action threat and sneaking Velling behind the linebackers, behind the second level of that defense up the seams. That's a huge part of this offense. And then what you get with the outside threats in Nick Marsh, and hopefully Childs gets better throwing outside, but Velling right now is their most reliable target, just a really consistent player, right?
Yeah.
And that's the type of guy that you want as your starting tight end, especially a team that's rebuilding like this.
Who is the star defensive player for Michigan State?
Look, they lost some guys in the portal, but we're going to talk about a guy that they got from UCF in the portal last year. That's their safety, Nakai Martinez. He's a guy who really does a little bit of everything, right? He had over 200 snaps last year at free safety, in the box, and in the slot. He's a little bit undersized, which makes it harder for him to tackle some bigger backs and things like that, but he plays with his hair on fire. He's really aggressive and only allowed a 44.2 passer rating into his coverage, which was 3rd among Big Ten safeties. So I think they do have to figure some things out at corner, but on the inside, to have a player like Nakai Martinez with his versatility, that really helps out, at least between the numbers in this secondary. I think I have more questions on the outside than I do on the inside with that.
Yeah, really athletic player. He plays with his hair on fire, which is kind of a negative too, because right now over his career, he has a 0th percentile missed tackle rate in his career. A lot of missed tackles on tape for Nakai Martinez, but he's a very, very good coverage defender for the Spartans right now. Dalton, the over-under for Michigan State is 5.5. So basically, the bottom line for them, will they make a bowl game next year?
This is tough. Because you know what, for as much as they were developing and as young as they were last year, they did go 5-7. Yeah. And they were close in a couple of those other games. I think about, I think it was the Boston College game that went down to the wire. They did not play bad when they played Michigan. That was a tighter game maybe than Michigan fans feel it should have been. But this team, it's like, can they take just it feels like going from 5 to 6 wins really should feel like a baby step, but it always feels like, okay, we got to get to a bowl game first. Let me look at this schedule.
You want to go first?
Time. You go first. You taking it?
I'm going under. It's tough. I think they can squeak out a bowl game with that schedule, but I don't know. I think they'd have to obviously win their first 3 games, which is Western Michigan, Boston College, and Youngstown State. And then they got to probably beat Maryland. They got to beat UCLA, and then probably beat a team they're not supposed to beat too. That's a lot to happen for me to make a bowl game. I'm going to go soft under at 5.5.
They could start 3-0. That's possible.
Yeah.
Boston College is a 50-50 game. UCLA, they get at home.
They should win that game.
Think so. There's some tough road ones, Minnesota, Indiana, Iowa.
Too.
I think so, but that's the thing is where you get to, so even if they start 3-0 and then you get to UCLA and Maryland.
That's 5. And then who do they beat in the other 7 games though?
You got to pull one off.
That's what I'm saying. I'm going to go under, soft under. I was also saying they're going to beat Boston College and UCLA and Maryland.
No,
too,
and Boston College, that's like a 50-50 game. Yeah. That's a decent team. And UCLA, at least they get UCLA at home. Maryland was they beat Maryland last year, but it was tight. I think I'm with you. I'm just going to make them prove it to me. This is a close one because it wouldn't shock me at all if they made a bowl game, because it really just takes one more step from the same players they had last year. I'm going to take the under and make them prove it, but I might regret it when we see them go 6-6.
Yeah, pretty tough schedule. The 19th hardest schedule in the country. I'm going to go soft under. I think it'll be a 5-7 year once again, unfortunately, for the Michigan State Spartans.